Terry McAuliffe must be really desperate if he's asked Joe Biden for help. Now, McAuliffe should be the hot favourite to win the election next week for Governor of Virginia. I mean, 4 of the past 5 governors have been Democrats, including McAuliffe himself, but is now in so much trouble that he's called on President Biden, even though Biden is himself absolutely bombing in the polls, partly because he seems in severe mental decline. That kind of showed when Biden took the stage this week and slurred through his speech.
Virginia, you know Terry. You know his record. He was a great governor. If you re-elect him again, he'll be another 4 years as a great governor. But look.
But why is McAuliffe in such strife? He actually had some theories this week. He complained that his opponent, Republican businessman Glenn Youngkin, is talking about the vicious new race politics being preached by the left, including by Democrats.
He talks about critical race theory. He talks about having these parents' meetings on critical race theory. It really bothers me because it is a racist dog whistle.
A racist dog whistle? In fact, it's critical race theory that is racist. And you don't need to be a dog to hear it. It is screaming at you. Here's the latest example. Professor Brittany Cooper of Rutgers University. You tell me how this is not as racist as a Ku Klux Klan pamphlet or a copy of Der Stürmer ranting about the Jews.
I think that white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate, right? But I do think that all of us can sort of agree that a politics that says like there are superior and inferior human beings just isn't the way to go. And that's the thing that white people don't trust us to do because they are so corrupt. You know, their thinking is so morally and spiritually bankrupt about power. The thing I want to say to you is we got to take these motherfuckers out. But I know, but like, we can't say that, right? We can't say, like, I don't believe in a project of violence. I truly don't.
That is white hatred, racism, and preached by someone at one of America's top universities, someone teaching students, teaching presumably tomorrow's teachers and writers and politicians. Now, that kind of racism it's not just unhinged, but it is informed by the most astonishing ignorance of history. You know, where it's like a cartoon. Whites are uniquely evil, blacks are uniquely good.
They say stuff like, you know, it's just human nature. If y'all had all of this power, you would have done the same thing, right? And it's like, no, that's what white humans did. White human beings thought there's a world here and we own it. Prior to them, black and brown people have been sailing across oceans, interacting with each other for centuries without total subjugation, domination, and colonialism.
In Professor Brittany Cooper's racist world, there was no Arab conquest of North Africa and Spain. There was no Ottoman Empire stretching to the very gates of Vienna and demanding tributes in slaves. There were no Nigerian slave traders. There was no Aztec Empire with slaves and serfs. And this is just one example of how critical race theory feeds on ignorance and preaches ignorance by reducing everything to race, and then hiding behind race when people like Cooper are held to account. I mean, show us she's wrong, she'll tell you you're racist. So what is McAuliffe's saviour, Joe Biden, doing about this cancer? Well, the president is helping it to metastasize, to spread. One of his first actions as president was to overturn Donald Trump's ban on federal agencies preaching critical race theory. And this month, Biden appointed a supporter of critical race theory, a supporter of the idea that the institutions of the US are fundamentally racist, appointed her as a special assistant in the Department of Education, in its Washington, D.C. Office of Communication and Outreach. But if there is one thing that American education does not need, it is more people preaching race resentment and racial division. Earlier this year, for instance, psychiatrist Aruna Kilani gave a lecture at Yale University called The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind. And she said, I had fantasies of unloading a revolver into the head of any white person that got in my way, baring their body and wiping my bloody hands as I walked away, relatively guiltless, with a bounce in my step, like I did the world an effing favour. I'm sure that, like me, you've heard many examples of this new racism, this anti-white racism, and it's spreading. Just this week, a student at Michigan State University saw nothing wrong in giving out free face masks to everyone except white students who had to pay $10. And it spreads beyond the universities. You've even had an iconic American multinational, Coca-Cola, have its employees given lessons about how to be less white because, white is a terrible thing. The Coca-Cola lesson said to be less white meant being less oppressive, less arrogant, and less ignorant. And around the Western world, this anti-white racism spreads. On the other side of the globe, in Australia, a youth worker ordered white Christian boys in a high school to stand up and called them oppressors. So, yes, I'm not surprised that McAuliffe is in strife. And if he says that anyone who's calling out this racism is just the racists themselves, he is part of the problem. If President Joe Biden, standing next to him, is saying that what America's education system needs is even more of this race hate, then he's part of the problem too. Where are they leading America and the rest of the world? To a new race war? To the hatred and the sheer idiocy of a Professor Brittany Cooper?